And Sairam to each and everyone on this call. It is my honor and pleasure to share this evening with all of you. And Swami is our master, and we are all fellow pilgrims. And we all depend on him to take us to the goal. So, just as all of you have your own experiences, your own learnings, your own journey, I too, just as you have my own journey. And um, Swami will share with us what is mutually beneficial to all of us, including myself. In this spiritual path, faith is very, very important. It's really the foundation. Without it, um, the superstructure cannot be built. And if we do attempt to build a superstructure without the adequate foundation of faith, it's liable to collapse at any time. So, among the very first things that Swami taught me was to have how to have faith in him. Some of you may have heard me share this before, but for me it is such a fundamental experience, such a landmark experience in my journey that with your permission I will share that again. When I was, as Brother Jean mentioned, I was in the Sevadal in Chennai. At that time it was known as Madras. And Swami was on a visit to Sundaram. And those of you who may have seen it, that is Swami's residence in Sundaram. And there are devotional singing sessions held on Sundays. And probably and other days there are other programs that happen there. There's a very beautiful hall where a sizable gathering can sit, and even outside in the there's an open space where a lot of devotees can be seated. So during Swami's visit, a lot of devotees, it almost feels like the whole of Madras is converging on his residence, because there are people from all over, and it's a real tight space at that time. And we were getting ready for the evening darshan. And though it was the month of January, it's pretty hot even in even in winter. So the concrete and the sand over there were pretty hot to the barefoot. So we were trying to clean it up and sprinkle some water to kind of take away some of the heat, so that when devotees come in and sit down, they can be a little bit more comfortable. As we were doing that, this was around 3 in the afternoon. And as you know, that building has a lower story, or a first floor and a second floor. And Swami's living quarters are in the second floor. So suddenly we heard that familiar divine voice on the balcony or the veranda of the upstairs. So naturally we all stopped there and we looked at Swami, at where this is coming from. And this place is so beautifully decorated. When the Lord is visiting, so the Sai organization, all efforts were made to make the place beautiful. There were garlands hanging everywhere, and it was there were lights, which will come on at the nighttime, focus lights and floodlights and all that. So it would be like almost like a structure which descended from heaven onto earth. Such is the beauty of that place when Swami is there. And of course, he is the crown jewel of that beauty. So he came out at around 3 in the afternoon, and we were all outside. And then he struck a conversation from the balcony to a scholar, a priest, who was on the first floor, and he was talking to him something. And I believe at the time he was talking about where the eclipse will be, whether it's over visible in Australia, and so on. And this devotee, very, very great scholar, he was sharing that Swami, it would be there, and they were talking those details, which was all way above my head, of course. So we were just having this beautiful darshan of this distant conversation from the second floor to the first floor. Okay. And we were enjoying that. And then I was there nearby, and then on the first floor, and then Swami said, come up. He told me, come up. So I thought, okay, he's asking me to come up. So there's a door there which leads to the inner rooms, and then from there there's a staircase to go up. So I was making my way towards that door when he again said, come up. So I figured that, yeah, I thought probably he wants me to hurry up. So I again moved quicker towards that. Then he said, no, come up, he said. And then I was like, then it struck me that he wanted me to come up. And I saw these garlands hanging there. And so I thought, oh, I'm supposed to now catch this garland and go up. So I tried to reach for the garlands which were hanging there. And they were like slightly out of my reach. So I, took a little running start, and I tried to jump and catch the garland, but it was still beyond my reach. So at that time, after a few attempts, I thought I should get like some sort of a stool or a small table so that I can get on it and then reach the garland. So I went, and I was just going to look for that, Swami, obviously he knows everything that's transpiring in my mind. He said, not necessary. He said, akarledu. He said in Telugu, not necessary. And then he said something very, very profound, which remained with me forever. He said, Swami chapte mala weight తీసుకుంటుంది. Meaning, if Swami says, this flower garland will take your weight. And I was really moved by that, and it strengthened my faith in Swami and in the power of his word. The power of his word is such that it can manifest anything. Whatever he says will come true. He says, Satyam is my prachara. What I speak is truth. Dharma is my acharam. Whatever I do is dharma or righteousness. Shanti is my swabhavam. Peace is my very nature. And premayana swarupam. Love is my very form. So whatever he says will come true. Such is the power of his word. And this he inculcated in me on that occasion. And since then, my faith and trust in him, with his grace, have been cemented. The reason I use the word faith and trust is, one of my elders once told me, faith is knowing that Swami is God. Trust is knowing that he will come through for you when you need him to. So sometimes we think that, oh, Swami is God, but our karmas are so bad, he may not be able to come through. And somehow we put our bad actions or something, as if they can come in the way of Swami's grace to us. But that's not true. If he wills, if we have sufficiently pleased him, he can come through, karma or no karma. That is the marma, that is the secret. Understand this, because you see in the 108 names that we say of Swami, we say, Om Shri Sai Karma Dhvamsine Namaha, meaning, O Lord Sai, you are the one who can destroy the effects of bad karma. So, no karma can come in his way. Now, having said that, Swami does not encourage us to do wrong things and then say, okay, Swami, now you bail me out. No, that's not how it works. So, we have still to do the right things, because he has given us the 5 values, the human values of truth, right conduct, peace, love, and non-violence. So yes, we have to adhere to truth. We have to follow the right conduct. We have to be peaceful. We have to be loving and non-violent. That is his teaching. That is his requirement of us. So first thing was, he taught me was faith and trust and in the power of his word. The next thing he taught, and the obedience. What he taught me then was we need to be very, very obedient to the master. Now, some people may think, what happens to my free will? What happens to my capacity to think and examine for myself? He does not take that away from you. That's why he says, come, examine and experience before you believe. But once you believe, do not go back. Do not second guess your faith. At the slight whisper of something else to the contrary, do not let your faith waver. The slightest trouble that comes up in your life and you think that God should have taken care of it, do not let your faith waver. Because what He has come to give us is far more precious than anything that this world can offer us. At the same time, He is more than happy to give us what we need. So He says, I give you what you want so that one day you may want what I have come to give. So He is fully aware that we cannot suddenly go to the very top floor of the building, of the Empire State Building or whatever. We can't just go to the 140th floor. We have to slowly climb first floor, second floor, third floor, and so on. So He's very patient with us. He's very loving. He's very kind. The smallest of desires, the smallest of wants, the smallest of needs, He is more than happy to fulfill. And He will do this ad infinitum. He'll wait patiently, very patiently. In fact, I remember once somebody said there was a devotee who came from overseas to visit Swami in India, and he was waiting for a month and for the coveted interview or for even a look of recognition or a word of encouragement from Swami. And Swami did not even look at him or speak to him for so long. And then towards the end, out of desperation, this person, when Swami was passing by, he lunged forward and said, Swami, I've been waiting for you for a whole month, and you have not even looked at me or something. And then Swami, very sweetly, it seems he said, dear, I have been waiting for you for several lifetimes. He's very patient. He gives us whatever we want in the hope that one day, in this life or in a future life, we'll turn to Him to ask that which He has come to give us. So, in this same spirit, He took me through those same things. I was a teenager when I came to Him in my early teens. Obviously, the things that are there in the minds of teenagers, you all know, it can be things only of this world. I cannot even pretend to say that I was spiritual. I was anything but. At the same time, I have to give thanks to my parents. They brought me up not only me, my siblings as well, in a very beautiful manner. They taught us good values. They taught us how to do our duty, how to be good to others, and fundamental steps in the spiritual path. At the same time, I was not overly spiritual. We were, like any other kid, I used to enjoy sports and cricket in India growing up and things like that. And we go to school and try to score well in your subjects, in your studies, the usual life. And at that time, we were blessed that Swami came into our life. I remember this very first darshan that we had of Swami in Chennai. It was in a place called Abbotsbury. Back in the day, there was a very nice building there. And it was where a sizable crowd could gather and have Swami's darshan. In that very first visit, there's a huge crowd. Several thousands of people had gathered for Swami's darshan. And I was there at one end of the hall, way back, like I was just barely 5 or 6 rows in from the end of the gathering. And Swami very graciously, before he went on to the dais to give his divine discourse, he came and he walked to the very end because he knew that people were waiting for a long time and they were thirsting for his darshan, to see him from up close. And so he came right back and he stopped in front of me at a distance. When I say front of me, front of where the section where I was seated, maybe about 5 or 10 rows in front of me. And with his grace, when I looked at him, I just knew that I'm looking into the eyes of God. Mind you, I'm here a teenager who's only preoccupied with playing cricket and doing other stuff which teenagers would do. And out of the blue, when I see him, the first thought that crosses my mind is, I'm looking into the eyes of God, and I have known him, and he has known me forever. This is not my first time I'm seeing him. Though in this body, it was the first time I was seeing him. And I could not hold back my tears. They were tears of joy. I felt like the prodigal son. And then, after that, with Swami's grace, I could join the service, Sevadal. It was so beautiful. It is so beautiful. Everything that I learned of service, regarding service, was through example, not through discourses or scripture. It was by the example of those, my elders, my elder brothers who were there. They took me under their wing. They nurtured me. They would always give me opportunities. Even when Swami came to Sundaram, they would put us youngsters in the front. And they would stay back. Why is that? They wanted us to get the grace of the Lord. They wanted us to get that opportunity of proximity. Such was their selflessness. Of our leaders, they led by example. In this school of learning, I took my baby steps in service. And at that time, I'll be honest, my motivation for joining was not anything to do with service. I just saw on that trip that all these people who are wearing whites are standing close to Baba, some of them on the stage nearby and other places. So if I need to get close to him, I need to wear that whites and I need to be there. So how do I do that? So then I found, I have to join the service organization. So that's why I joined. My intention was not to wipe the tears of sorrow of anybody. I had no such intention. I had only one intention of getting close to him. That is all. And that was a means to an end. But later on, I realized the sanctity, the sacredness of this wing of the organization. And then from that, my mind and heart started expanding. As Swami says, selfishness is contraction love. Selflessness is expansion love. I read this later on, but I saw examples of it. And I was nurtured by those examples. So any good you see in me is because of Swami and because of the Sai organization and because of my elders and my elder brothers who gave this all to me. And of course, my parents who gave me the very foundation. So in this way, slowly we would start doing service. And service was, I never thought of it as logging hours, so many hours to get a signature. I never thought of it as I'm helping somebody. Nothing. It was so joyous. There was just happiness. I would feel sad if I didn't go for a service opportunity. And the weekend, and for us in those days in India, we didn't have a weekend of Saturday and Sunday. Only Sunday was our weekend. We had school even on Saturdays. So on Sunday early morning, I would take my bicycle at 3 o'clock or 3:30. I would early 3:30 a.m. I would drive. I would cycle a few kilometers to one of our elders' home, and in his car, we would go to a place far away to do Nagar Sankirtan at a place which Swami had established a temple there. And we would go there and we would do Nagar Sankirtan, early morning devotionals. So I would park my bicycle in his house compound. We would get into his car and then we would go there. Then after that was over, we would come and we would have some breakfast at a restaurant somewhere there. And then we would come down to Abbotsbury. In its premises, there was one medical place called Sai Krupa. It was like an outpatient service, medical clinic, where typically on Sundays, we would serve 700 to 800 patients. And these are the doctors and other volunteers who do that. And we would just chip in wherever we can. And this would all go on till about 2:30 in the afternoon. We would be done. And then we would head to Sundaram for the evening bhajans. And then when evening bhajans are done, we would close. And by the time I go home, it'll be like closer to 8 in the evening. So what started as 3:30 in the morning would end like closer to 8 in the evening, go home, have dinner, and crash. And that was it. It was so blissful. Even what I'm saying falls far short of the joy that we had. And this was not because of anything. I was not doing anything to uplift the world, to wipe the tears from anybody's eyes. I had no such illusions about my service. It was simply partake of the joyous satsang, the company, the Sevadal brothers. And over a period of time, it grew on me. It was like a taste that I cultivated, that I was born into. I mean, I was raised slowly on that diet of seva, and it became a way of life with His grace. And for this, I'm eternally grateful to Swami, his organization, my elder brothers and sisters who showed us the way. Then once, and then Swami was very gracious. Like I said, he gave us many opportunities. The organization gave us many opportunities. And that way, Swami would talk to us, joke with us, all youngsters. And slowly without our knowing it, he transformed us. Like, I believe one of the Sai students put it very beautifully. The transformation was from street dogs to street lamps. Okay, I'm borrowing that phrase, and I could say same thing for myself. So instead of wandering here and hither and thither aimlessly, a purpose was given to my life. And that purpose has stayed with me. And the beauty of this is each one of us has been given that purpose by Swami. Each has had his or her own journey. It may be our starting conditions may be different. We may all have had different paths. But remember, for instance, today, when I joined the Sai organization, if somebody had told me so many years down the line, you would be sharing about this with fellow devotees, fellow pilgrims of the Hollywood Science Center, which was first formed in the US, I would have dismissed it as a figment of their imagination. I could never have seen this. We are all connected, whether we are halfway across the world or whether we are in the next room, we are all connected. And what is it that breaks that connection? It is Sai himself who makes that connection. This bond is closer than the bond of family. This bond is closer than that of blood relatives. This bond is a bond of the soul. This is one unique bond. That's why when the students sing that song in Telugu, when we sing the songs, Humko tumse pyar kitna, Sai tum hi janate, Dilo ki dhadkan tum ho Sai. Of course, they sing it beautifully. I will not even attempt to go there. But in that, Miku maku oke bandhamu, adiye prema bandhamu. There is only one bond between you and us, and that is the bond of love. This bond is what makes us all one family. And how did Swami teach me that there is this bond among all of us? That's an experience by itself. And I'll just share that because that was another landmark experience in my journey. And that was when my brother and I used to visit with Swami very often, and he was very gracious. He gave us many opportunities to be in his presence, interviews and personal time and other things. So on one visit, my brother was unable to join me. We were both in the, we're doing our high school or college days, initial days. So maybe like a senior year, junior year, or something like that. And at that time I visited. My brother had some other work, so he couldn't come. Excuse me. So then what happened was I was there in Prashant Nilayam. I was seated, we were having Swami's darshans, bhajans, and it was going beautifully. And as my trip was coming to a close, as luck would have it and Swami's grace descended on me, he called me in for an interview. So when I went into the interview room, he was talking to everybody, and then he looked at me and said, "Where is your brother?" Because we used to go together. So I said, "Swami, he's in Madras." And then Swami again went round, and then he asked, after some time again, he asked, "Where is your brother?" Then I said, "Swami, he's in Madras." And then at that time, Swami said, "Who's the person sitting next to you?" Like as though he made a mistake or something. He thought that was my brother, but it was somebody else. And I said, "I don't know, Swami. When you are sitting for darshan for Swami, you are more concerned with whether he comes to you, gives you pada namaskar, takes your letter." At least that was my way of looking at it. It was selfishness at its height. Okay. I was only focused on him. I was not really worried about who's sitting next to me and who they are or where they come from or something like that. So I said, "No, Swami, I don't know who it was." Then again, he went around and then he asked me again, "Where's your brother?" Then I almost, as though I'm talking to a little child who doesn't get it, I stretched out and in an exaggerated way, I said, "Swami, he's in Madras." Like, get it? Okay. Of course. And immediately at that moment, Swami's demeanor changed. And he said, "Narrow mind." Now, suddenly, the interview room did not feel a very nice place to be. And I wanted to be out of there as quick as I could. But he said, "Narrow mind." Again, he repeated, and he's put a scowl on his face. I was like, "So what did I do wrong?" Then he said, "Don't you know that the person sitting next to you is also your brother? Not just the brother who's in Chennai, in Madras. He's also your brother." And then he said, "All are your brothers, all are your sisters." Through this dramatization, through this way in which he taught the lesson, forever he etched in my heart this lesson of the brotherhood of man and the fatherhood of God. Yes, I had come across this before. I read it. Probably I may have shared it with somebody, but it didn't strike home as it did that day. And in this manner, in very beautiful ways, he taught me how to expand that small heart which thinks only of me and mine, me, my brother, my sister, my father, my mother, my small family, and then expand that to include all. It is so beautiful. It is never to be forgotten. Later on, as time went by, other lessons were also taught to me. At that time, I moved to Brindavan, Bangalore, because I got a job in Bangalore. I finished my studies in Madras, and then I got a job in Bangalore and I moved there. So I joined the Seva organization there in Bangalore, and I used to go to Whitefield, Brindavan. And then on one occasion, Swami was, there was, for those who visited Brindavan, in those days, there used to be a small deer park across from Swami's mandir. The Trai mandir is there, and across from that, there's a small, private road, tar road, and just on the other side is a fencing which encloses a private deer park, so to speak. And there were many deers there. And one day Swami had gone and given darshan to the devotees in the, Sai Ram shed. At that time, there was no Sai Ramesh hall. And he was returning and he was walking by the fencing, and he was coming straight and he was walking and looking towards the deer. And I was at the other gate on the opposite side. I was on duty near the other gate. As he was looking at the deer, he kept walking. And he walked and he was looking all the way, and the sun was shining through the trees and falling on Swami's beautiful halo. It was a sight for the gods, literally. I was drinking in this sight, and as Swami was looking at the deer, all the while he came and he stopped very close to me, about 1.5 feet away from me. And then, without looking at me, all the while looking at the deer, because what happened by then was there were two male deers. They had locked their antlers together and they were pushing against each other. So they had dug their feet in and they were pushing each other. So it was almost like a territorial dispute. And they were fighting and they were pushing each other hard with their majestic antlers and everything. And then Swami, very gently, almost in a whisper, he tells me, poor things, they don't know that I am here. Meaning that here is the Lord of creation watching over them, and they are in his personal, space, in his residence. They are privileged to be in that residence, but yet they are fighting there. He just said that. He said, poor things, they do not know that I am here. And then he slowly turned and walked away. He never looked at me. He just was all the way looking at those deer. And then it struck me, after some time, that there's a profound message that he wanted to share with me. Was for my own thing is, you all are here, I am here, make the best of this opportunity. Do not get distracted by other things. Territorial dispute, I am greater than him, or I am more important than somebody else, or I didn't get the respect that I was supposed to get. Forget all of that. You come here for Swami. Focus on Swami. Follow his teachings. Live the life that he has shown you. Redeem your life. That is all. In this way, so that was another lesson that he taught me. In this way, there were so many opportunities, so many lessons, so many beautiful things. I'll just fast forward and I'll take it to coming to more recent times. The way in which he has steered me in my journey. And this is another thing. I've come across this quote of one. Before that, I'll tell one important thing. Whatever else we do or don't do, from Swami's perspective, we do not know anything unless it is put into practice. For instance, if I say, oh, we are all God and there's only God and all that. It's all beautiful to say. But if I do not live by that, he's not very much interested in that. For him, then they're just words. Or if I say, love all, serve all, you know, again, he's not particularly impressed by that. He'll simply ask me, are you actually loving all and actually serving all? If that be the case, then by all means say love all, serve all. My wife Sarojini and I, with Swami's grace, for Swami's 90th birthday, around that time we had come up with this book with his grace, and it's there. It's Faith, Hope, and Love: A Personal Journey from the Lowercase I to the Uppercase I. And so we wrote that, and the editor had edited it and all that, and everything was ready, and we thought we would get it printed and all that. And just 2 days before Swami's birthday, actually, or on the birthday of Swami, that was 2015, we were here it happened here in Texas. I had this dream of Swami. And in that dream, Swami was coming in his chair, and as he was coming closer, I saw that he was distributing some books to those around him. So I was look, and then as he came closer, I realized that it's the book that we had written. And so I was pretty happy that Swami had taken the, trouble or whatever interest to do that. So that felt very good. But as he came near me, and as he's distributing the book to somebody, he tells me in Telugu, he asks me something in Telugu, which I'll say and then I'll translate. He said, Rasindanta patistunava, meaning, are you practicing all that you have written in this book? And saying that, he's distributing the book and he goes off. And then I'm completely grounded. And I'm thinking, oops, the very fact that he asked me shows that I'm not practicing everything that I've written in that book. So if I were practicing everything that I wrote in that book, he would not have asked me that question. So I went back to the book and I looked at it. Nothing out of the way. It was more our personal journey and all that. At some places we had written, oh, love all and serve all and all that, and things like that. Then the question came up, am I actually loving all and serving all? Or am I just quoting Swami when I say love all and serve all? So then I understood that probably that has to be a rider or a disclaimer saying that this is Sai's teaching and I'm a work in progress in this area. Okay. Instead of simply saying love all, serve all, and just, make it sound like as though I'm doing it all the time. So we made that, and if anybody of you have seen that book, in that a touch of humility creeps in, and we say that we are a work in progress and all that. So that was what it is. So Swami is not interested in just the theory of things. He is interested in whatever you say, are you actually living it? If not, at least say that you're okay, I'm a work in progress, or I have failed in that, I'm still striving, something like that. But do not mislead somebody into thinking that, you have attained it or something. So, because then he said, I have to correct you for two things. One is for the wrong, that you are not actually doing it. Second, for misleading others to make them think that you are doing it. So I'll have to correct you for two wrongs in that case. So I think it's enough if he corrects me for one wrong. So I will not go make the other mistake. So in this way, Swami said that we have to practice before we can, quote unquote, preach or say as if we are doing it. So having said that, a certain quote of Swami from Shirdi Sai has come to my attention by his grace. And I shared this before as well, because this is something very profound and which has impacted me greatly. Because once I was wondering on this statement of Swami. Swami says that I'm in you, around you, above you, below you, and so on. So I was thinking, okay, around me, above me, beyond me, that's all fine. That's outside of me. But what is that portion of him which is within me? So what is it? Obviously, it's not that form because that's not within me, and that's not within Jane or any one of you, because forms are separate. So that form is not within these forms. So as what does he exist within me? Was a question that I wanted to get an answer to. So then I got this, of course, I had an inkling of the answer because Swami threw a particular curveball at me. And in that process, he made me turn inward. And in that, when I turned inward, I just had a sort of an intuitive perception of what that might be. And then later on, I I prayed for a sign from Swami that, hey, if I'm on the right track, just show me a sign. And that night I went to bed and I went to a prayer room and I just offered my prostrations and then I went to bed. And for some reason, through early morning, I got up and probably I couldn't sleep too well or something. And I came back to the prayer room. And then I saw a garland which had been kept on one of the uh, mother goddess form picture. It was an artificial garland which had been there for a long time. It had never been touched. And that had half fallen. And then I thought, oh, okay, so Swami confirmed that answer. And then, if you're wondering what that answer is, I got another confirmation from the Sai Satcharita, in which, in one particular place, there's a small paragraph in which it says, who am I? And in that, Shirdi Baba says, you need not go far or anywhere in search of me. Barring your name and form, there exists in you, as well as in all beings, a sense of being or consciousness of existence. That is myself. Knowing this, you see me within yourself and in all beings. If you practice this, you will realize all pervasiveness and thus attain oneness with me. So he gives the answer. I was asking, so what do you exist as within me? In all beings, there's a sense of being or consciousness of existence. So for a moment, actually, as a small exercise here, with your permission, if we can all just close our eyes for maybe 30 seconds and stop all thought, but just be that awareness. Sarah, now gently, if you open your eyes, in this time, when there were no thoughts, there was no other activity, you were still there. You knew that you are there. That you is not really you. That is Sai. That is the sense of being or consciousness of existence. Some people call it the I am principle. That is what you are. That is the Sai within you. That is the wave. That's why when somebody asks Swami, and I think, and I don't say that this is what he said, but this is just my conjecture at this point. When somebody asks Swami, how do you know what is happening in my heart and mind? Do you enter my mind and read my thoughts? He said, no, I'm already there. Who is already there? That I am principle is already there. So that is how he knows everything that's in our hearts and minds, because he is already there. But what has happened is, for us, to that I am principle, we have attached our name and form. And then it becomes I am so and so. The I am is there, and then we attach the name and form, and then it becomes I am so and so. I am Shyam, I am XYZ, I am whatever. But if we can go back just to the I am principle, that will be staying with Swami, the formless aspect of Swami. The formful aspect is our beloved Sai in front of us. The formless aspect is the I am principle within us. The I is the unmanifest state. The I am is the manifest state. The I am so and so is the limited state. So our journey is really to move back from the I am so and so into the I am, and then fold back into the I, as we do in deep sleep, or probably under anesthesia. I do not know. But in these conditions, because there is no other at that time, that is why we do not see anything. In that moment of deep sleep, there is no object subject differentiation. Right now, there is me, there is you, there is this whole world, whole universe, whole creation, many universes. There is the subject object relationship. But if we, in deep sleep, there's no subject, there's no object, there's only the subject, the I, the supreme I. That is the I which Swami says, why fear when I am here? It doesn't mean that physically the Sai form is next to you, because he is the formless, he is consciousness. He is that all pervasive consciousness. That's why he says, I'm in you, above you, below you, beside you, around you. What is that? Do you see him around you? Do you see the form around you? No, but he's there as consciousness. That is the fundamental nature of Sai. That is his formless nature. Out of his compassion, he took this form. We too are that fundamentally that. That is what he has come to teach us. We too are fundamentally that. The only difference is we have clogged, just like our hearts have been clogged and people need bypasses and stents and so on. Our spiritual being has been clogged. He has come to declog us. Just like you are the Hollywood Center, he has come to make you all hollow wood, meaning the flute. Okay? So he makes you that hollow wood. He removes that pulp. And then the purpose of the Hollywood Center would have been served when all members become hollow wood. How do you do that? Is when we realize that Swami is the portal. We all talk of portals today on the web. Swami is our portal to that infinite consciousness. In him, the infinite consciousness has taken birth for our sake. And that's what you call as avatar, descent of the infinite supreme being in a human form. We too are avatars. Only difference is we are avatars in amnesia. We have forgotten our divinity. Because once a journalist asked Swami, when he said he was a critic of Swami, and he said, Baba, you say that you are God and all that. How can you say that? And then Swami said, that's only half the statement. I said, I am God and so are you. I know it while you don't know it. It is patent in me, it is latent in you. That is the only difference. So he is the purest form of the supreme consciousness, which some people may say is a Purna avatar or the complete avatar and so on, because he is, there's nothing, there is no other part to him other than his infinite consciousness. And for our sake, he took on the appearance of this form to help us in our journey to build an attachment to this form so that we may drop all other attachments. And he dropped his form so that we may now connect with his supraconscious, original divine status. And so that we may also transcend our own forms. Otherwise, we will be forever limited by our own form. Yes, his divine, the beauty of his form is his form, when we are attached to that form, it frees us from all other attachments. When we are attached to some other forms, it bogs us down to this worldly life. So therefore, attachment to the form of Sai is not a bondage at all. In fact, it is the most required thing, because that will free us of all bondages and take us, as Swami says, to the summum bonum of all realization. In his first World Conference in May 1968, which is there in our Satsai Speaks, if you all go through that discourse, towards in one portion of the discourse, he says, this is the name and form which encompasses all names and forms by which the divine has ever been addressed by mankind, referring to his own name and form. He says, so when we are attached to him, we are attached to Jesus, we are attached to Allah, we are attached to Buddha, we are attached to Muhammad, we are attached to Mother Devi, Hanuman, Rama, Krishna, any other name you can think of, Ganesha, Kartikeya, Subramanya, Zoroaster, Guru Nanak, anybody, because he is that supreme Brahman. And here it will be good to remember what he has said in his original words. He said, Sukkalaniyu Brahma, all the stars are Brahma. Suryundu Adi Brahma, the sun is Brahma. Chandrudananu Brahma, Jalamu Brahma. Swargamanadi Brahma, Vaikunthamadi Brahma. Talli Ananu Brahma, Tandri Brahma. Bhagyamanadi Brahma, Valabhyamanadi Brahma. Jivarasulu Brahma, Jivi Brahma. Puttinchutadi Brahma, Poshinchutadi Brahma. Gittinchutadi Brahma, Grihini Brahma. Karmalanniyu Brahma, Kayambu Brahma. Prakriti Antayu Brahma, Pranambu Adi Brahma. Sarvamantayu Brahma, E Sabhayu Brahma. Satyamulu Telpunatti, Shri Sai Brahma. He says everything is Brahma or divine. The stars are divine. The moon is divine. The sun is divine. Heaven is divine. Creation is divine. Sustenance is divine. Annihilation is divine. The mother is divine. The spouse is divine. The parents are divine. The living beings are divine. Everything is divine. Life is divine. Everything is divine. Everything is Brahma, the Supreme. And the one who is saying all of this, Sai himself, is Brahma. In fact, he is the Supreme Brahman who has come for our sake, who has took on this form. On this world stage, the director of this cosmos took on a role, and that is the avatar. And he is helping us to go beyond this. Like once, I believe Dr. Hislop, John Hislop, asked Swami, you said that life is a dream and we have to realize it. Then Swami, what are you doing in this dream? If life is a dream and we have to realize it, Swami, what are you doing in this dream? He said, Hislop, I have come to awaken you. He has come for each one of us to awaken us from the dream of illusion, the dream of separateness, to unite us back to our real self. And we can do it here and now with His grace, with His blessings. And for that, we strengthen ourselves through our practice of His message, of loving all and serving all. And we may fall short, like he said, I have not reached it. Definitely, I have not reached it. As he told me, are you practicing what you have written? Clearly, I have not. So, we are just works in progress, and He is the Divine Master. He sculpts us from the boulder that is our life. He's sculpting our life, and He's making beautiful icons of each one of us so that He can keep them on His mantelpiece with Him forever. Sairam.